Hello, my name is Amy Jablonski. I'm the director of a multi-tiered system of support division at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. This is an overview presentation of a multi-tiered system of support, MTSS. The purpose of this presentation is to build common language and understanding of a multi-tiered system of support. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has adopted a definition of MTSS that embraces total school improvement. As you can see on this slide, we've used words such as framework, school improvement, research-based academic and behavioral practices, as well as focusing on a system approach, using a data-driven problem-solving model, and the focus of MTSS is to maximize growth for all. Therefore, when we think of MTSS, we think of a total school improvement framework that focuses on academic and behavioral practices to maximize growth for all. To better understand MTSS, we need to unpack this definition by looking at the 6 critical components of a multi-tiered system of support. The 6 critical components that the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has adopted has been done through talking with implementers in North Carolina, as well as across the nation. At the end of that research, we've adopted these 6 critical components that you see on your screen. So when we think of MTSS, we think of leadership, a shared leadership approach that builds strong teaming structures. We focus on building capacity and infrastructure for implementation. North Carolina is an implementation science state, therefore we use all that we're learning to build MTSS so that we have solid infrastructure for implementation. We also recognize the importance of communication vertically and horizontally throughout your system, as well as to your outside partners, and the importance of collaboration with the community members in which your school serves and your district works within. The crux of MTSS is data-based problem solving. We recognize within the framework that we need to use a systematic problem solving model that allows us to work through the data in which a team is looking at, to produce good results for groups of students and individuals. The one critical component that has MTSS stand out from other models that are out there is this second to last one, the 3-tiered instruction/intervention model. Now a little bit, I'll go through what each of the tiers mean, unpack them a little bit within this overview, and talk more thoroughly through them, but really this is the crux of MTSS, is having a 3-tiered instruction/intervention model. Throughout the entire framework, we embrace data evaluation, otherwise known as assessment, and we look at having a comprehensive balanced assessment system. We recognize that when we're solving problems, that no one piece of data ever trumps another to come to some type of resolve for instruction and intervention for academics and behaviors. So when we talk to implementers across the state and across the nation, we all agree that we can see these 6 critical components through school improvement plans, district improvement plans, and also we can link these 6 critical components to our State Board of Ed goals and objectives. Now, a multi-tiered system of support, we didn't start here in North Carolina. We started with these 2 initiatives and these 2 focuses, really coming out of the Children's Division at the agency in 2004. Around then is when Positive Behavior Intervention Support, PBIS, which focuses on a strong behavior continuum, and RTI, or Responsiveness to Instruction, rolled out as well, focusing on an academic problem-solving continuum. Both of these rolling out in isolation really had implementers solving problems in isolation, academics and behaviors, without thinking about how the teams and the instructional practices intersect and a lot of times overlap and sometimes even argue with each other. And so both of these initiatives coming out from the EC division ran out parallel, and implementers across the state were trying to find ways to put the connecting pieces together. Therefore, when we think of a multi-tiered system of support, we think about bringing together the pieces that already connect of both PBIS and RTI. Now that means that all of the strong components that help PBIS sustain and be successful in North Carolina, they stay intact, as well as all the unique and critical components of RTI, they also stay intact. A multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, we just find those already intersecting pieces and weave them together for implementers which helps us reduce teaming structures, which also helps us think about how we problem solve and look at data, as well as how we streamline instruction and intervention, so that way we can produce really strong outcomes for groups and individuals within our schooling system. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has put in place a vision for a multi-tiered system of support. As you can see on your screen, is that NCDPI really would like to see every pre-K through 12 education system implement and sustain a multi-tiered system of support. This means that as we've built and we're helping you implement, we're thinking about your entire schooling system. Therefore, this is not an early elementary setting that we're focusing on or secondary. It's about building a strong continuum of supports that focuses on the instructional practices, the curriculum choices, and the environment in which our students experience all of our schooling system. To be able to get this work done, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has a mission for this work. As you can see on your screen now, this mission really speaks to the way in which we're going to support districts and schools to be able to install an MTSS framework. We're focusing on professional development, coaching and technical assistance, research and evaluation. You'll be able to know the pieces and components of MTSS that are being installed within your system at great strength, and those that need to be focused on as well to help boost your outcomes. And then also having a clear communication plan and being visible across the state to support your work. The second part of the mission really comes down to a strong belief system and statement that the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has come up with in regards to MTSS. And in their stance, it's echoing the Leandro case that our job within an MTSS framework is to ensure equitable access to a sound basic education is there for all students. That means that we focus on how we support all staff to remove identified barriers for students so that way they can be successful. The definition, vision, and mission of MTSS was formulated by this MTSS leadership and policy team at the agency. This leadership and policy team is comprised of these division directors. They've come together first once a month and every other month as the problems got more complex to solve for implementation for 2 hours. And what this does is it helps the agency sort through how MTSS impacts all areas within our agency. The goal within installing MTSS in your district and in your school is to model this same formula, that we have folks around the table who build, support, and can change policy and practices to help allow schools to be able to implement successfully. This leadership and policy team is active and will remain active as we continue to implement MTSS across the state. We recognize that we're not to the place we need to be within MTSS across the state. We're still working on shifting our focus. For so long, we've been thinking about building a process for some students to experience. By definition, a process has a start to a finish, and some kids are in process or out of process. And we're moving to a framework for total school improvement. As the definition of MTSS states, we're talking about all students, which means that you can't automatically become part of MTSS or get out of MTSS. All students are part of it because all students are part of school improvement. This next section I'll move into will talk about the layers of instructional support and be able to unpack each of them. A layering of instructional support. At the base, we talk about differentiated core instruction. In addition to differentiated core, we discuss supplemental supports. In addition to supplemental, we also talk about intensive supports. This layering of instructional support really makes this model stand out from other models that we've had before in the fact that we're laying instructional support so that way students can accelerate their learning in whatever area they need to. Our focus of having the triangle on its side allows us to remember that differentiated core is the base of what we do, and it becomes the focus of our particular work. Throughout all layers of instructional support, we focus on the 3 words that are on the bottom right-hand corner of the slide: instruction, curriculum, and environment. We ask those questions. How strong is our instructional practices that we've chosen to install? How strong are our curriculum choices, meaning the material, the pacing guide, the way in which we teach our behavior supports? And how supportive is the environment within time and being culturally and linguistically appropriate, as well as how we group our students and our staff? We focus on instruction, curriculum, and environment because these are the three areas within every school, class, and system in which we have control over. Therefore, when we talk about our layering of instructional support, we focus on these particular areas before we talk about individual students, also known as our learners. Let's talk about each tier now, or each layer. I'm going to start with core or tier 1. Within core instruction, we focus on all students. We look at groups of students across grade levels and how they respond to core instruction. When we take a look at core instruction, we ask, is it strong enough? All the curriculum choices, those instructional practices, our time, our master schedule, is it all strong enough for the actual students in which we serve? Core in Tier 1 is discussed in every classroom, every grade level, every content area, vertically throughout our building. At the basic level, at times we need to take a step back and say, does it make sense to go through our core instruction within our school, within our district, from building level to building level? When we take a look at core instruction, we realize it becomes our only and best prevention for the students in which we serve. We focus on the backgrounds of our students, the strengths, and those areas that our students need more work on, and we build as much as we can into core. We realize that all of our students experience core instruction, and therefore it needs to be the strongest instruction that we have. If we have big gaps within core instruction, then we realize students need supplemental supports, possibly intensive supports, in areas that become gaps within core instruction. Therefore, throughout all of our professional development and all of our coaching and technical assistance and materials such as our guidance document, we have a strong focus on core instruction because we realize that as strong as it is how what your outcomes look like right now. So our goal is to make sure core is strong enough for the students in which you serve. When we talk about core instruction, we talk about the effectiveness of it. We realize that we need to have at least 80% of our students making progress and growth in core with just really core alone. We first take a look at asking ourselves, do we have evidence-based practices and programs in place? And we do that by saying, what is it that we're teaching and in which way? And we want to have the majority of students responding to those evidence-based practices and programs within core to have the majority of students having good outcomes. We look at this 80% not just a holistic number. We do it by subgroups as well. So with classroom assessments, universal screener, common formative assessments, benchmarks, summative data, office discipline referral data, our attendance data, all those pieces, we take a look at it and we say, across our subgroups, do we have at least 80% of our subgroups in each of those making growth, hitting standards, whatever it happens to be? And if not, we want to make sure that we're problem-solving core instruction first and foremost. It's imperative that we look at academic, behavior, and attendance data at the same time within core instruction so that we know which areas to solve, which problems to focus on, rather than putting behavioral practices in place where academics can be put in place, or academics for behaviors. So core instruction is the very pulse of your school. It is the largest component within the model and the place that we know we want you to focus the majority of your time, because if we can problem solve some areas and deficits within core instruction, then supplemental and intensive instruction will be stronger as well. In addition to core instruction, we have supplemental instruction. Supplemental, we specifically say, is not supplanting. For a long time, we've been talking about instructional practices, unfortunately, in a way that has been supplanting core instruction, possibly with time, resources, whatever that was. Therefore, students who need more acceleration were actually getting less or equal time than their peers to catch up, to close their own gap. So supplementals, in addition to core instruction, does not cut into. We call, again, for evidence-based practices and programs to be in place that help students make progress towards core instruction. So when we think about supplemental instruction, we ask a new question for ourselves. We ask now, what difference should we see in core instruction, or Tier 1, as a result of supplemental instruction? We want to see differences within core, and for staff to be able to articulate what those differences are. In addition, supplemental instruction needs to be connected to core content in some way, shape, or form, and that the adults in the building that are helping groups of students can identify it. What are those connections? So that way students can have a more fluid way to connect from supplemental to core. Right now, across the state, we don't have a strong Tier 2 model in place, which is why within MTSS, a focus of supplemental is to help you rebuild that if that happens to be your place as well. Because a lot of our focus has been on Tier 3 supports, when really our focus needed to be is 1 strong enough and is 2 strong enough. Within Tier 2 instruction, we also talk about the fact that we want students to have quick access to it. Therefore, throughout professional development, you'll hear things about building a strong matrix based on your core instruction data, so that way students have direct access to supplemental when they need it. Within Tier 2 instruction or supplemental, we talk about its effectiveness as well. Is it strong enough? We say that, at least 70 to 80% of students receiving Tier 2 support should be making progress towards core instruction, not spilling over to Tier 3. Right now, across the state of North Carolina, we see a lot of systems and schools where Tier 2 isn't strong enough or effective enough, and a lot of students are spilling over, for lack of a better word, to Tier 3 because Tier 2 hasn't been worked. So therefore, we say, even across subgroups, do we have 70 to 80% of students in Tier 2 supports making progress towards Tier 1? Also, we try to help debunk the theory of a process by saying these students are receiving Tier 2 and 1 instructional support. So they're 2-1 instructional support students, not just 2, to emphasize that core instruction does not get supplanted. Within this particular model of MTSS, we also have intensive instruction, or Tier 3 instruction is the most intensive level of instructional support that you have in your building. When we think of intensive instruction, we think of students who need the most intensive level of instructional support for academics and or behaviors. These students typically are a few years behind their enrolled grade level. They need more time, they need more intensity, they need more of our focus. These students tend to have complex academic and behavior problems that teams get together and meet with. And the thing that with MTSS that we recognize early on is that any student has access to intensive or Tier 3 supports. It's not just reserved for students identified as having a disability or LEP or 504. It's all gen ed kids too, anybody who needs it. Now these students get intensive, supplemental, and core instruction, which means that most likely these students will have to miss something. What that something is unique to those individual kids and their schedule and the entire package that they come with. Therefore, they should be revisited often to make sure that schedule is still working for them as well. From a systemic standpoint, each school and district can only hold about 5% of students needing the most intensive level of instructional support. Otherwise, we aren't able to provide the needed intensive instruction for these students, and we wind up compromising traditionally the fidelity of what we're trying to give. When we take a look at the progress of these students, unlike other particular tiers of instruction support that have an effectiveness, the effectiveness of Tier 3 really is that students are making progress towards core standards. We recognize by lots of different places of research that it may take a couple years for them to reach standards. However, that progress towards standards is really important. This model of a layered instructional support really does allow for all staff to support all students through behavior and academic continuums of support. Our goal is to build a model in which all students are able to reach standards or able to grow within each year. We also recognize that Tier 1 is our only and best prevention, supplementals in addition to, and Tier 3 intensive is in addition to that. Now, to help all systems and individual schools build MTSS, from the state perspective, we're providing professional development and coaching, as well as research and evaluation and communication tools and communicating to you through various avenues. And our statewide support is there to help you build your model. We recognize that each district and each school in each district is very different, and we want to help you build that framework. Our statewide support system looks like this right now. That myself, Amy Jablonski, I focus on state coordination. Lynn Lozer is our specific learning disability state consultant. And then we have 8 regional consultants, and you can visit our wiki to see what regions that they serve, as well as for their contact information. I appreciate the time you've taken to listen to this overview and the beginning of building common language and understanding, and appreciate your time.